Before I start, I want to conduct a little experiment. Let me ask you a few simple questions. So, raise your hand if you prefer Marvel. Okay. Now raise your hand if you prefer DC. Let me ask you another question for the ones who aren't comic book fans. Raise your hand if you prefer Apple. Raise your hand if you prefer Samsung. Did you notice something? Did you notice how quickly you answered? Most of you didn't even need to weigh the technical specs or understand the complicated cinematic history. You just knew. That's because we aren't focused on answering the question objectively, but instead on protecting an identity that we've already constructed. And the truth is, we all do this. I do this. We sometimes take the information presented to us and reframe it in a way that fits our perspective, overlooking the context so it fits our narrative, making us feel safe and secure. I recently saw this in myself. I was scrolling through social media, as one does in my generation, when I came across a series of posts from a law enforcement agency in which they were comparing superheroes with their agents. The same superheroes that I grew up with, the same superheroes that defined my childhood, were now being contorted to fit a perspective I didn't agree with. I'm going to be honest. My immediate action wasn't curiosity. It wasn't to ask why the agency is doing this or why these posts were made or to understand the context behind it. It was the spark of defensive anger. I felt attacked, even though there was nothing harmful in the post, except it didn't fit my narrative. I was mistaking familiarity with truth. I was hiding in my own facts and rules. I was using a window and I was turning it into a mirror that only reflected my perspectives and my ideals. I was facilitating an epistemic closure. Now you might be asking, what in the heck is she about? What is an epistemic closure? Well, let's ask Superman to explain that for us, don't we? It takes place in three simple steps. First, fact A. Let's think of Superman's superpowers. Heat vision. Superman is using his heat vision to melt a block of ice. Then there's the rule, which is that we know that ice is melted by heat. And since we all know basic physics, hopefully we know that's true. Therefore, we know that the ice has melted. Therefore, we know that the ice has melted. We don't need to look for other answers. We don't need to look for other outcomes. We are satisfied. That's the closure. But what if I started to reevaluate that defensive spark? What if that discomfort wasn't a sign of a closed mind, but a sign that something was missing? Maybe I wasn't maybe I wasn't ignoring the context in the first place. Maybe the context provided didn't account for the entire truth. Let's look back at Superman for a second. If we assume that the ice is melted because of our rule, we stop being observers. We stop checking for that puddle. We become trapped in our own facts and rules. What if the feeling to look down and check for the puddle isn't a sign of being satisfied, but an invitation to be more curious? If we don't look down at the puddle, we might miss something important. Maybe the ice never melted in the first place, or the ice was a holographic projection from the start. I mean, anything can happen in those superhero worlds. But by looking down and checking for that puddle, we move away from an epistemic closure into an epistemic expansion, moving beyond our horizons and the familiar rules that are blinding us from the new truth. However, Looking for the puddle is getting harder every single day. We're no longer fighting our own brains. We're fighting multi-billion-dollar architecture that has been calibrated, to keep us looking away from the ground. Algorithms are built on simple logic. Once you like or dislike a post, it learns and feeds and it evolves, hence creating engagement, which is social media's currency. It effectively, as I said before, traps us in our own facts and rules, making our rules into cages that hide any contradictions, creating an echo chamber, sheltering us from the fiction and discomfort. But we have to understand that our engagement is in our hands. So we choose how we spend it. So, how do we look at the puddle when it feels like the entire algorithm is hiding it from us? Well, it's simple. We just have to go back, way back, even before that, way before the golden ages of Marvel and DC. We have to look at an ancient class of superheroes. Not the ones with the capes, but the ones with the questions. The ancient philosophers treated the pursuit of truth as the ultimate form of power. Socrates didn't seek safety in his dialects. He, he practiced his beliefs. He created the Socratic method of questioning. He believed truth isn't something that you own, but something that you uncover by inviting contradiction. As he put it himself, the unexamined life is not worth living. In his perspective, a hero wasn't someone that protected their narrative at all cost. A hero was someone that was brave enough to let their narrative be challenged, broken, and rebuilt stronger. He taught us that when we seek out diverse perspectives, we aren't losing an argument. We are expanding our horizons. We're moving away from an epistemic closure into an expansion and regaining our empathy. We are seeing the world not as a series of labels yet to be applied, but as a beautiful, complicated mess and a story yet to be discovered. And we move away from the mirror and look into the window. Throughout this talk, I've mentioned a lot about mirrors and windows, but even a window is a limited tool. It's a fixed frame. It can only show you what the person in front of you wants you to see, what the person who built the house wants you to see, and what's immediately in front of you. That's why I propose we upgrade. We don't treat media as a window, but as a telescope. Now you might be asking, why a telescope? Why of all the things a telescope? Well, it's simple, really. A telescope requires manual, active focus. It requires you to account for your own shaky hands and readjust the lens. If we acknowledge media as a telescope, we understand that what's in front of us isn't the immediate story. We move our lens away from the brightest stars in our feed to the nuances hidden in the dark. I've already started implementing this in my own life. Every single time I came across a post that makes me think, yes, exactly, I stop and I search for a credible counter argument. Not because I want to change my mind every single time, but because I want to make sure that my telescope is calibrated. I want to make sure that I'm not hiding in the safety of my facts and rules and moving to the horizon beyond me. Now you might be asking, is it worth the discomfort? Is it worth the mental energy? But I don't care. But the thing is, it does. It absolutely matters. Because we, again, as I said, we are the ones that control our engagement. So how we spend it is what matters. So tonight, I leave you with a challenge. When you go home and you start scrolling on your social media or any other post, and you come across a post that matches your attentions perfectly and matches your beliefs perfectly, I want you to stop, then look down and check for that puddle. See what the see what the algorithm is hiding from you. Question why it's hiding it from you. And then I want you to pick up your telescope, adjust your focus, and look at the horizon in front of you. Because in a world of mirrors, the most heroic thing that you can do is seek out different perspectives. Thank you.